Psychology is a really big field of study, and because it directly involves some issues that can be very personal to people, there are some topics that it covers that can be a little controversial. In my opinion, one of the most controversial topics within psychology is the one that covers intelligence. The reason it's so controversial is because there is a huge amount of subjectivity that's involved in a person determining whether or not somebody's intelligent. What may be intelligence for one person may not be for somebody else. We all look at the topic a little bit different depending on our perspectives and what's important to us in our lives. To somebody who's an academic, intelligence may be tied to good memory skills and being able to recall theories and concepts. To an artist, being creative may be an important part of intelligence. To other people, the ability to think on your feet in a practical way, or what we may call street smarts, may be more important. Who's to say that one of you is better than the others? Who's to say one of you is right and the other is wrong? The problem, though, is that psychology has to come up with a definition for intelligence because we have to be able to study it in order to help individuals that may be impacted through injury, developmental issues, or illness. This controversy over what qualifies as intelligence, how to define intelligence, and how to study and measure intelligence has been part of psychology for a very long time. One of the first psychologists to look into the topic of intelligence was a man named Charles Spearman. Charles Spearman is famous for developing the idea of a G factor in intelligence. The G factor stands for general. Essentially, Charles Spearman believed that there was just some general universal factor that needed to be identified that determined whether a person was intelligent or not. He didn't necessarily know what the G factor was, and it kind of changed a little bit over the course of his career. Initially, the idea was that this general factor was psychological in nature, but that shifted more towards biological factors later in Charles Spearman's career. He also shifted in his belief of one universal aspect to explain this G factor, and later in his career believed that there could have been other components to explain it. One of the reasons why he believed there could have been additional components to this general factor is that intelligence is rarely uniform. There are some people who are especially gifted in one area, but may be average or even deficient in other areas. I know for me, I'm very good at language skills, but I've always struggled with math. For me, I may be above average for language skills, but deficient in math skills. So intelligence isn't always a one-size-fits-all issue. This led to a very long history in psychology of determining what components go into making somebody intelligent. The next psychologist to expand upon our understanding of intelligence was a man named Raymond Cattell. He believed that there were really two main types of intelligence: fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence was your ability to come up with new creative solutions, to think on your feet, and oftentimes to be creative. Crystallized intelligence deals more with your ability to think of an established answer, recollect information quickly, and largely to apply concepts, facts, and information. I like to refer to crystallized intelligence as being your Jeopardy intelligence. While Spearman's ideas of a G factor is largely a historical concept in psychology, Cattell's idea of fluid versus crystallized intelligence is very much so a part of the modern science today. However, the idea of there only being two types of intelligence still seems somewhat limiting considering the wide range of abilities a person can be capable of doing. So the process continued of determining what specific types of intelligence there may be. The two theories that are most referenced regarding specific types of intelligence are the Triarchic theory of intelligence and the multiple intelligences theory. The Triarchic theory viewed that your intelligence was composed of three main components: your analytical intelligence, your creative intelligence, and finally your practical intelligence. So basically, analytical intelligence refers to academic problem solving and computing skills. Creative intelligence referred more towards imagination and innovation in problem solving. And practical intelligence referred more to street smarts and The multiple intelligences theory is more expansive in considering the scope of a person's intelligence instead of just looking at 3 or 2 factors. The multiple intelligence theory suggests that there were at least 8 different types of intelligence, and these included things like linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical intelligence, musical intelligence, body kinesthetic intelligence, spatial intelligence, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence, and also naturalistic intelligence. The Triarchic theory has been supported over the decades through research, but the multiple intelligence theory hasn't had as much credibility in scientific fields as the Triarchic theory. Oftentimes there's a debate over whether there's a difference between a skill versus intelligence, and with the multiple intelligences theory, most critics say that what's really being referenced in that theory has more to do with skill, which can change with experience and knowledge, versus an inherent level of intelligence, which may not be as easily changed. While the theories I just mentioned and the different types of intelligences that I discussed are an integral part of the modern science of psychology, there's been continued debate up to the present day about whether or not there are other different types of intelligence that should be factored into the discussion as well. These include things like emotional intelligence, or how well a person is able to regulate their emotions and to be emotionally supportive to other people, as well as cultural intelligence, how well a person is able to understand cultural differences and integrate that into their day-to-day routine. One part of this discussion that is almost always mentioned is the role that creativity plays in determining a person's intelligence. Creativity has been a very difficult concept to define and to measure just by the nature of what it is. After all, how can you define and measure something that by its very definition is meant to involve new and novel solutions to problems, fresh perspectives, innovative ways of thinking? I mentioned that intelligence can be a very controversial topic in psychology. So far, we've just discussed defining intelligence. But the really controversial topic in psychology is how to measure intelligence. Part of the reason why intelligence testing can be so controversial is that much of the history of how it was conducted based testing on what's known as achievement scores. A test based on achievement measures how well a person does based upon the experiences that they've had. Basically, it's how well they're able to apply the information that they already know. So for example, if I had a test that popped up at the end of this video that tested everybody who watched it on the information that I covered, that would be an example of an achievement test. The problem with measuring intelligence this way is that not everybody has the same access to experiences and information. When early intelligence tests were devised, people who were from lower socioeconomic statuses, poor people, oftentimes minorities, and women scored much lower than people from higher socioeconomic status and men. This wasn't a reflection of those groups being less intelligent than others, but rather an indication of them not having access to the same opportunities. For this reason, most intelligence tests today don't measure achievement, but rather aptitude. Aptitude tests don't measure how much a person is able to apply information that they already know, but rather their future potential. There are 3 intelligence tests that are the most common in the United States. These are the Stanford-Binet Intelligence Scale, the Weschler Intelligence Scale for Children, or WISC, and the Weschler Adult Intelligence Scale, or WAIS. The Stanford-Binet and the WISC are usually given to children and are largely similar in their administration and scoring. The Stanford-Binet historically looked more at verbal skills, whereas the WISC also included nonverbal skills. The Stanford-Binet has also been used more often in school settings to help with placement into special programs. The WAIS is the most generally accepted intelligence test for people older than 16 in the United States. All these tests are aptitude tests, but they also have some other features, including the fact that they are standardized, which means that they are given to test takers in the exact same way under the exact same conditions. These modern tests also involve norming. Norming involves giving a test to a large group of people so that data can be collected comparing groups, like people of different ages. This is most obvious when we talk about IQ scores, which stands for intelligence quotient. The way that an IQ score is determined is by taking a person's mental age and dividing it by their chronological age. So let me explain that another way. Say I have a child that is 10 years old, but takes an IQ test that has norming, and their scores match the average of an 11-year-old. Their mental age would be 11, and their chronological age is 10. 11 divided by 10 is 1.1. We then multiply by 100 and get 110. Their IQ would be 110. Typically, IQ scores fall into what is known as a bell-shaped curve, which you can see here. The average scores for an IQ test usually fall between 85 and 115. Over 2/3 of the population fall into this range of IQ. Generally speaking, a person that has an IQ above 130 is considered to have a superior level of intelligence, and a person that scores below 70 is considered to have major cognitive and adaptive deficits. Just over 2% of the population of the United States has a score under 70, and the same number have a score above 130. However, it needs to be pointed out that an IQ score alone is never used in determining this. A person could have a lower than average IQ score but still be highly functioning. Likewise, a person could have a very high IQ and still have issues. You have to look at multiple factors and not just the IQ scores alone. Indeed, much of the discussion of intelligence and psychology today has moved away from the idea of comparing IQ scores and really viewing each person as being unique and capable in their own way. The focus isn't so much on the averages, but rather on helping people, each individual person, live to their fullest potential. If you're enjoying content like this, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and to give me a like by pressing the thumbs up icon below. This helps me to continue to expand these videos and provide amazing content to all of my viewers. Thanks for watching, everybody.